Sally Field's life at 78 years old is drastically different from her glittering career that made her a revered Hollywood star. Many of her devoted fans fantasize about a lavish retirement party full of joy and comfort, having grown up watching her in, marveling at her Oscar-winning performances, or cherishing her roles in. Surprising and disturbing debates have been sparked by the reality of her current life. Many now call Sally's decisions and troubles sad, and her fans are left to wonder how such a lively figure got here, away from the glitter and red carpets. You won't believe what you're about to hear about her current life. The legacy of Sally Field in Hollywood. Sally Margaret Field came into this world in Pasadena, California on November 6, 1946. Her resilient and independent outlook on life was formed by the upheavals in her family that she experienced as a child. She had to adjust quickly to the harsh realities of her parents' divorce in the 1950s. Jock Mahoney, an actor and stuntman, became Sally's stepfather after her mother remarried. Her upbringing in a family with ties to show business prepared her for a life in show business. However, it did imply enduring an atmosphere rife with demands and expectations during my formative years. Her tenacity was laid down in her formative years. The depth and candor she brought to her performances were influenced by her upbringing, as she frequently recognized in her later autobiographies. Sally was already confronting the obstacles that would shape her path into maturity by the time she was a teenager. At the tender age of 17, she had an abortion in 1964, the very year she earned her high school diploma. The procedure was risky and emotionally taxing because abortion was prohibited back then. It had an indelible mark on her, and she would only open out about it years later in life. Her courage and vulnerability, which would later define her acting, were laid bare by the event. But this didn't stop Sally. She started appearing in modest roles as a film and TV extra between 1962 and 1964. While these early appearances didn't catapult her to stardom, they did teach her the ropes of the set and the industry's cutthroat competition. It was a humble beginning to her career, but it paved the way for greater things to come. The 1965 television series Gig, in which she played the lead part, was her first major break. Sally was cast as the role of a carefree adolescent from California, and her energetic demeanor was a natural fit for the part. Gig left a lasting influence on both viewers and industry heavyweights despite its brief run. The Flying Nun, a whimsical sitcom that she co-starred in from 1967 to 1970, was another one of her many notable roles. A familiar face in 1980s pop culture, the show chronicled the out-of-the-ordinary exploits of a nun with flying abilities. Having the part was both a blessing and a curse for Sally. On the plus side, it ensured that she had steady employment and remained visible to the public. On the flip side, she was concerned that no one would ever take her seriously as a dramatic performer and felt creatively restricted. She went on to say that this time was trying, since she wanted to show her true acting chops and escape the safe, humorous roles that had been her trademark up until then. Still, she was able to establish herself as a mainstay of American television, thanks to The Flying Nun, which provided her with a stable early career. In 1976, with her role in the TV movie Sybil, her career took a significant turn. Sally shocked reviewers and audiences alike with her performance as a young woman struggling with dissociative identity disorder. Her performance was marked by emotional depth and empathy. As she skillfully portrayed numerous identities, she became known as a serious actor who could handle tough material thanks to her performance, which also garnered her a Primetime Emmy Award. She reinforced her rising position even further in the late 1970s. She had a successful acting role in the 1977 comedy Smokey and the Bandit, which co-starred Burt Reynolds. The film showcased her talent for balancing charisma and wit on screen, and introduced her to a larger audience of moviegoers. However, she firmly established her position in Hollywood history in 1979. She exhibited both tenderness and strength in her portrayal of a factory worker turned union organizer, Norma Ray. The early to mid-1980s were a banner year for Sally's career as she landed a series of major roles. Kiss Me Goodbye, Absence of Malice, and Places in the Heart all featured her. The last section was monumental, since it earned her an Oscar for Best Actress for the second time. Her prior success was clearly not coincidental, since she joined an exclusive club of artists after winning 2 Oscars. Her performance in the critically acclaimed film Steel Magnolia demonstrated her talent for giving nuanced characters empathy, strength, and warmth. As she grew into her roles in the 90s, she continued to have success. Playing a mother entangled in a family conflict, she skillfully blended comedic timing with genuine emotion in Mrs. Doubtfire. Not Without My Daughter was another one of her strong dramatic performances. It was about a mother caught in a terrifying real-life scenario. She became famous for her portrayal of the titular character's wise and loving mother in the film Forrest Gump. Even into the new millennium, Sally was able to display her talent on television. Her guest appearance on ER in 2001 garnered her yet another Primetime Emmy for the dramatic depth she provided to the part. In 2007, she was nominated for another Emmy for her portrayal of the complex matriarch of a troubled home in the family drama Brothers and Sisters. Acknowledgement for her life's work in the entertainment industry has distinguished her later career. A star was bestowed to her on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2014, a testament to her enduring impact on the silver screen and television. One of America's most prestigious cultural honors, the Kennedy Center Honor, was bestowed upon her in 2019 for her contributions to the arts. Plus, she won the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award in 2023. Both her skill and the respect of her colleagues in the field were on full display in this illustrious award. Mistreatment, stereotyping, and difficulties experienced by Sally Field, 1993. Both in and out of the spotlight, Sally's life is an inspiring tale of bravery. Millions of people recognize her as an award-winning actress who has been in several memorable roles. But fewer understand the hardships she endured as a child and young adult that ultimately impacted her acting career. She came clean in her memoir about a secret she had kept for a long time. Stepfather, stuntman, and actor Jock Mahoney sexually molested her when she was a little girl. Many of her admirers were horrified to hear this news, since it exposed a personal scar that had been hiding beneath her successful career. Sally has been dedicated to honesty, resilience, and survival her whole life, and it is evident in her willingness to share this part of her experience. She should have felt safe and protected as a child, but the abuse started when she was young. She was left bewildered and distrustful because the betrayal had come from a member of her own family, her stepfather. As an actor and producer, Jock Mahoney was well known in the Hollywood film and television industries. He made Sally go through something that would affect her for the rest of her life behind closed doors. She buried the memory of the abuse and refused to speak about it publicly for a long time after it happened. Although it meant bearing the anguish alone, many survivors found that quiet was a coping strategy. Sally didn't decide to tell anyone the truth until she was writing her memoir, which was decades later. Incorporating this part of her life story was not a picnic. A revelation of this magnitude would alter people's perceptions of her and her family, and she was cognizant of this. But Sally faced an issue she had repressed for far too long when she spoke publicly about her stepfather's violence. She clarified that breaking her silence was about more than just reliving the agony. It was also about reclaiming her voice. Many found solace in her decision to come forward about the abuse. It demonstrated that even seemingly strong and successful individuals had faced hidden problems. The impact of the abuse on Sally extended far beyond her own life. She drew on the profound emotional experience it offered her for her acting career, but she also carried self-doubt and insecurity into her early acting career. She carried a fragile self-esteem and a tangled connection with those in power with her when she entered Hollywood as a young woman, among the baggage of those formative experiences. She thought she had struck gold in the late 60s when she was cast as Sister Betray in The Flying Nun. She became a household celebrity and was guaranteed frequent television appearances when the show catapulted her to stardom. Sally felt stifled, misunderstood, and mistreated by those who were supposed to be her guides, despite her achievements. From 1967 until 1970, The Flying Nun had commercial success. However, Sally came clean about her distaste for the job later on. Sally was unenthusiastic about playing the part of a young nun whose habit gave her superpowers, even though the unique plot was a huge hit with viewers. She experienced a sense of being undervalued and stereotyped, relegated to portraying a role that failed to showcase her skills and potential. The directors, she remembered, would frequently disregard her gut feelings and treat her like she could do nothing more than repeat her lines, which made her feel disrespectful. This disrespect was crushing for an aspiring young actor. It made her wonder if Hollywood would ever take her seriously, and reaffirmed her internal sentiments of helplessness. Typecasting was a traumatic experience for her. The constraints of her character stifled her. Even as she was thankful for consistent employment, she was portrayed by the cheery, nearly cartoonish nun by the audiences. However, Sally yearned for parts that would enable her to delve into the intricacies of genuine human feeling. She found it more difficult to break free as the show became more successful. Sally was viewed by the business as a performer more suited to light-hearted comedy As Sister Bertrill's popularity grew, the position was more like a jail than an opportunity for someone who knew she was capable of more. Her unease on set of The Flying Nun was a reflection of her personal troubles. A lack of creative freedom in her early work paralleled the way her stepfather had deprived her of a feeling of security as a youngster. She felt unheard and discarded as a result of both incidents. The seeds of her will to stand up were, however, sowed by both of them. She was determined to show directors that she could handle serious work after feeling mistreated by them. Her yearning for challenging roles that would unleash her whole potential grew in proportion to her frustration with conventional casting. An event involving Jimmy Webb and Sally's osteoporosis. Contrasts, including both professional success and profound personal tragedy, have always been a part of Sally Field's life story. She has maintained her status as an esteemed Hollywood figure since the early 2000s, and her adaptability and durability in the industry were often lauded. Unbeknownst to the world, she was secretly fighting an illness that threatened to alter the course of her life irrevocably. Sally was diagnosed with osteoporosis, a disease that weakens the skeleton and greatly increases the likelihood of fractures, in 2006, shortly before she turned 60 years old. Since Field had made no obvious symptoms of illness, the news came as a shock. She went on to tell WebMD that she was fighting an invisible but serious health struggle because her bones appeared to be growing thinner without any apparent symptoms. Field felt emotionally invested in the news of her illness, which made it more distressing. Knowing that the cancer ran in her family, she was not totally taken aback. Actress Margaret Field's mother was an osteoporosis patient, and her two grandmothers had also dealt with the disease. Sally is more vulnerable because of this bond between generations. Even though bone density typically decreases with age, osteoporosis makes the process far more rapid. Preventing and managing the condition is crucial, because for many people, it goes unnoticed until a significant break happens. An often hidden ailment that impacts millions of individuals, particularly women, was brought to light by Sally's candor with her diagnosis. She went public about her personal health battles to bring attention to the importance of bone health and to inspire others to do the same. Sally addressed osteoporosis with a strong sense of purpose, knowing full well how terrible the disease is. She refused to let it control her life and instead sought out ways to mitigate its impact. She started taking vitamins every day. They ate more foods high in calcium, two things doctors encourage for strong bones. Also, she made sure to include weight-bearing workouts in her routine because she knew that moving and using resistance would help her bones stay strong. Her personal and professional perseverance shone through in these doable actions. Osteoporosis does not have to imply giving up one's quality of life. Astonishingly, she has avoided serious consequences or fractures caused by the illness. Her experience demonstrated the significance of preventative health care for the elderly and the inner fortitude needed to confront such a prognosis. Sally's caution regarding osteoporosis has a broader cultural significance as well. For a long time, people generally avoided or considered as shameful any conversations regarding becoming older, particularly those involving women. She contributed to shifting the topic by speaking openly from her own platform. She emphasized that dealing with health issues is not a sign of failure, but rather a normal aspect of being human. A diagnosis of osteoporosis should not be seen as a death sentence. Her words inspired many to get screened early, take preventative measures, and keep living. Sally saw this openness about her health as just one more way that she has exhibited courage throughout her life, on television and off. Sally weathered her health problems with grace and dignity, but in her memoirs, she uncovered a darker and more challenging chapter of her life. She wrote of a meeting with the legendary Jimmy Webb, a singer-songwriter, in her book. This happened back in the 1960s, when Sally was a young lady trying to figure out her place in the complicated Hollywood and romance scenes. She said she and Webb had been out and about when she smoked a marijuana and promptly dozed off. Webb was still on top of her when she awoke, and she was describing how he was grinding to a different tune. Readers were extremely disturbed by this passage because it brought attention to yet another breach in Sally's personal narrative. But she also brought a new point of view that muddied the waters of interpretation. Field clarified that, in her opinion, Webb was not intentionally malicious but rather completely hallucinated. Although she found the event unsettling, she did not perceive it as predatory, according to her remarks. She recast it as an accident masked by the carefree, drug-fueled era's general atmosphere. The meeting did, however, highlight the precarious position she was in as a young woman, in a society where respect was inconsistent and boundaries were frequently porous. After Jimmy Webb's memoir came out, the New York Times reached out to him for an interview. According to Webb's email answer, He was not given the chance to read the piece about him beforehand. Still, he made note of their shared past, thinking back on their 60s romance. He did not want to discredit Sally, so he opted not to mention her in his memoir. But he did acknowledge that they went around, smoked drugs, and had sex. And further dimension to the incident was his response, which demonstrated his awareness of their connection and his personal need to safeguard her honor. Problems with Field's Rafelson and Burt Reynolds drama. For a long time, Sally Field was considered one of the most talented actors in Hollywood. A woman whose performances forever altered the course of cinema and television throughout the course of her decades-long career. However, Field's memoir excerpts show a far more nuanced and intricate path under the veneer of fame and prosperity. There are times when her recollections of events that impacted her career and personal life contradict the dazzling story that the public was led to think. They show the unsettling realities of a woman's experience navigating Hollywood at a period when the power dynamic was frequently skewed against her, as well as her courage and fragility. Some of the more revealing details are her tumultuous connection with Burt Reynolds and her disturbing recollection of an audition with filmmaker Bob Rafelson. Despite their obvious differences, these two periods in her life show how difficult it was for her to maintain a healthy equilibrium between her ambition, her identity, and her respect for herself. Her audition for Bob Rafelson's 1976 thriller Stay Hungry is one of the most memorable stories. According to Field, the director wanted her to kiss him during her audition for the part of Mary Tate Farnsworth. Rumor has it that Rafelson made the kiss an integral part of the audition process, claiming he would not hire anyone who was not an adequate kisser because of the larger implications as well as the act itself. This moment was exceedingly disturbing for Field. It mirrored the kind of power imbalance that actresses frequently encountered in Hollywood, where the line between personal and professional life was frequently blurred by powerful individuals. Not only did the experience serve as a reminder of how she landed the part, but it also served as an example of the level of vulnerability demanded of her in her industry. But Rafelson insists she doesn't remember the audition. He denied her claims in a phone interview with the New York Times, saying he had never demanded a kiss as payment for a role. He was taken aback by the accusation and quickly denied it. Public memory becomes tangled up in the dispute between Field's story and Rafelson's denial. Rafelson categorically denied the accusation, but Field recounted her reality as she knew it. The story highlights an indisputable fact, regardless of one's point of view. As they pursued their careers, women in Hollywood have long encountered situations that made them feel uncomfortable, compromised, or pushed. Field was more concerned with illuminating the sensation she had from that time than with denying or confirming one man's remark. This recollection of an audition represents more than just one contentious occurrence when seen in context. The disparity between powerful and powerless is depicted, especially for young women trying to make it in a male-dominated field, as if Field needed further proof that natural ability was not always sufficient. This incident further cemented her developing unease with typecasting and her earlier career underestimation. The fact that she had to deal with both internal and exterior challenges was a sobering reminder that she was not alone in this world. She reclaimed the narrative and ensured that her tale would not be destroyed by silence by sharing it decades later, after she had firmly established her legacy. Although this audition was a defining event in her career, she also had personal challenges that reflected the complexities of her work. Her connection with Burt Reynolds was both a public and private source of joy and pain for her. Their alliance appeared idyllic at first glance. Their chemistry was palpable in Smoke Okie and The Bandit and Hooper, two films in which they co-starred. As one of the most glitzy and exciting couples in Hollywood, they were quickly adored by the media. They embodied charisma, wit, and love for their admirers. Reynolds' cockiness and Field's warmth and humor worked wonderfully together. Their onstage chemistry seemed to carry over into their real-life romance, painting a picture of a loving, passionate relationship, despite the positive portrayal that viewers loved. Field would later admit that her relationship with Reynolds was everything but. She went on to say that although they had an instant and profound bond, the truth was more unsettling. Reynolds, she recalled, possessed an authoritarian personality that started to burden her. In private life, what appeared to be self-assurance or leadership in public places frequently became total control. His demand to be in charge made her feel stifled and restricted her independence. What appeared to be a glamorous affair was actually a partnership in which she had difficulty preserving her individuality, as she put it. During their time together, Reynolds' frequent drug use only made things worse. Taking barbiturates, Percodan, and Valium while filming Smokey and the Bandit was something that Field vividly recalled. In addition to these medications, he also had injections into his chest, the contents of which were unclear to her. He depended on it every day. It wasn't an infrequent thing, observing him maneuver through this hazardous and unexpected environment while playing left field. For her, the relationship was marred by the shadowy truth of Reynolds' addictions, which masked his charisma, and magnetism, which won over devotees. The recent life confession of Sally Fields. Sally Field is 78 years old, which puts her well beyond the retirement age, when most of her contemporaries are kicking back and enjoying life. However, people are still paying attention to her journey, and it's not necessarily for the reasons she would prefer. The actress who wowed audiences with her energetic turns in Norma Ray, Forrest Gump, and Gig is now in the center of attention for all the wrong reasons, one that downplays her impressive career in favor of her sagging looks. Online remarks regarding her gray hair, wrinkles, and natural appearance have sometimes overshadowed her accomplishments, and she has been the target of severe criticism for a long time. On the other hand, Field has been open about her decision to accept aging as it comes. She has been very forthright about her desire to forego cosmetic surgery and instead embrace her natural beauty, just as she has done in her many roles. Still, she must face an unpleasant truth. The harshness of public criticism has worn her down. Even while her personality and beauty were formerly lauded by the industry, they aren't necessarily on her side anymore. The fact that she is willing to bring up ageism shows how frustrated and courageous she is. Field has said that it hurts when people criticize her looks, rather than the decades of effort that have made her one of the most revered actors in Hollywood. The terrible reality of her current life is exacerbated by these critical comments, especially in this social media era. She battled valiantly during her younger years to escape stereotyping and gain genuine recognition as an actress. Being fired due to her age is a new and equally cruel battle that she must fight today. Witnessing such a gifted woman being held to such public standards is discouraging for numerous admirers. In Field's life, resilience has been repeatedly challenged, so this is just another chapter in that story. However, her story is not devoid of other dark aspects like ageism and criticism. The unlawful abortion Field had when she was 17 years old is one of the most horrific events of her youth, and Field has spoken frankly and honestly about it, both in her 2018 memoir, In Pieces, and a subsequent public video statement. She described the ordeal as horrific and painful, language that conveyed not only bodily suffering, but also profound psychological wounds. There were very few options for young women in 1964, almost 10 years before Roe v. Wade would legalize abortion in the U.S. Field, who was raised in the 1950s, stated that the event left her with a deep-seated feeling of shame, and she acknowledged that the weight of it remains with her even after all these years. She hoped that by telling her story, she may find other women her age who had been through the same thing, and she encouraged the younger generation to keep fighting for reproductive rights. It is terrifying to hear her story about the abortion. She went on to say that she felt helpless and unsupported by her family after learning she was pregnant. Her family had a doctor friend who was willing to drive her, her mom, and his wife all the way from California to Tijuana, Mexico, so she could have the procedure done. This man took an incredible risk for her. It was a terrible journey. She had never boarded an airplane before, and this was her first trip out of her native state. The situation became even more bleak once we arrived in Mexico. Someone dropped her off near a dilapidated building, and she was given an envelope containing $1,000 and told to give it to the individuals inside, as she recounted. As a somber admission of the potential danger, the doctor remained close by in case anything went wrong. The abortion, according to Field, was a horrific and life-altering experience in and of itself. A few blasts of ether briefly numbed her arms and legs without diminishing the discomfort, but no anesthesia was administered. The technician's actions intensified her pain as she felt every sensation during the process. One of the most upsetting things she mentioned was that the technician started molestation her while the surgery was being done. Despite her best efforts, her body was too weak and paralyzed by the ether to resist his advances. She felt an overwhelming wave of humiliation as a result of the ordeal, and it persisted even after the operation was over. She was ordered to leave the premises in a hurry once it concluded, as if her very being constituted an imminent danger. She recalled the shame, terror, and unlawful secrecy that had surrounded the deed. It was a turning point in her life, and she kept quiet about it for a long time. Despite the pain, Field has thanked the doctor for putting his license on the line to help her. There was a real fear that she would not have made it without him. Even though he kept quiet about it, he was courageous and she was grateful to him for saving her life. In hindsight, she also realized that many young women in her time went through the same ordeal, frequently without anyone to turn to for support. She felt compelled to publicly acknowledge their suffering alongside her own by telling her experience. Plus, she wished she could inspire others who are fighting for reproductive freedom at a time when it is once again in danger. If you want more videos, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and press the bell icon. Thanks for watching.